Hi everyone, welcome to Soulprint. Thank you so very, very much for being here. My name is Cindy. So I was asked to do a bit of a check-in on Poland to see how they're doing. But as I thought about it, what I really figured out I'm gonna do a spot check on Poland, but really what I want to know is you've got, 45 saying, yeah, you know what, if those Russian whatevers, they go into Polish airspace, just shoot them down. My question is this, is the bromance over? That's what I want to know. So I'm just going to dump all of that curiosity onto spirit because, they got a better view of things than I do. And let's just see what we can find out about what's going on um, between 45 and the wannabe czar of Russia because he doesn't seem any more well, he is still yelling and screaming at the UN even about how, authoritarian leadership is the way to go. He doesn't seem to be quite as securely nestled into Putin's pocket. So what's going on there? Okay, so first of all, those Russian sort of invasions of other countries' airspace. That really is sort of the Russian version of throwing, spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks. So it's these little forays where they're threatening another country's sovereignty, but what's going on behind the scenes? What's that about? Okay. So first of all, this applies to Poland and it applies to other areas, those that surround um, Russia. It is about creating unease, terror, fear, because it's only in Russia that some people still think um, that this is a training exercise or something and it's not an actual war. All the countries around there know exactly what it is. It is him attacking another country for their land and their, assets and their access to water. Now, I'm recording this on Sunday, and I think it was Saturday. It's sort of hard to know with the big time change difference, right? Um, but there was a really, really significant attack again on the um, Russian capital, if I'm not mistaken. So, what's going on there? Um, Part of it is that um, old Vod there, he's like flexing his muscles a little bit. Yet he's sort of like, I'll do what I want, and I'm going to push it as far as I can, and we're going to see exactly what you guys, the rest of the world, are prepared or not prepared to do about it. So the fact that Ukraine was not part of NATO is part of the reason that, of course, that he's been able to get away with what he's been able to get away with because other countries are like, but he's not a part of NATO, and what he's doing is absolutely blatantly wrong, and we're going to support Ukraine in all these other ways, but we're not going to, jump right in and join defending it. Now, NATO has expanded since this disaster in Ukraine started. And now it really feels as if he is just pushing the envelope. So the people in the countries surrounding um, Russia, more and more, They are really starting to feel like they're living their life on like tender hooks. Um, the anxiety level has just gone through the roof because NATO or no NATO, whatever, whatever, they are scared. They have seen what he was able to get away with, and they're not exactly, the average person is not exactly convinced that if he, broke down their borders, that they would not come under the same sort of um, destruction that he has rained upon the sovereign country of Ukraine. So there's a lot of anxiety. Now, what being shown here is that there's a lot of communication that's going back and forth among countries, i- including the US and Canada and Australia. Um, there's a lot more communication that's going on than we are aware of or that we are privy to. And so very quietly, I'm being told very quietly that there is support that is moving into strategic positions in an attempt to shore up um, resistance. And there are going to continue to be invasions of airspace, and those invasions are going to continue to be met with resistance and firepower. That's the word they're using in an attempt to stabilize those countries, in an attempt to reassure the people that as they're living in this state of incredibly high anxiety, that sort of the government's on it. Okay, like, they're paying attention, they're not sitting back and kind of seeing what his next step is going to be. They are reacting. More importantly, what I'm feeling is that it's the outside other countries that are reacting, that is I guess what is different from the Ukraine invasion. um NATO is stronger, and they seem to be taking stronger measures. They're reacting much more quickly and with much more sort of solidarity and firmness. So, in many ways, this is sort of almost like a wait and see, but certainly um the worry, the stress, the anxiety is high. And, you're talking of people's lives, their heritage, their, um, you know, you're talking about generations and generations and generations of people who have been on that land. Um, and they see that in other cases the borders are not really strong. Um, Financially, in terms of the economies, stuff like that, it 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 feels as if people are starting to become very cautious and careful. They're not, I don't want to say hoarding their resources, but they're certainly not being extravagant with them. And so that in its own kind of way, right, creates more of a financial stress on the overall economy, because all of a sudden people's purchasing has slowed down, and that creates sort of that ongoing ripple effect. um So, what's going on between the two of them? That's what I really want to know. Okay. So, let's sort of get some basics here, right? Um, Trump has a great deal of financial support from people who are very wealthy. And those people are about power. All right. They are about, money and power and accumulating it and holding on to it. And so, what seems to have been happening is there seems to be um, like reassurance that Donald is receiving that uh, sort of is along the lines of "Don't you worry, we've got your back, buddy." And so he feels um and it's interesting because when you step into his energy, there's a lot of like anger and rage but in some ways there is a sense of him being reassured that the people who will finance things to his benefit still have his back because where their interests lie is in continuing to amass and hold power. Now, the the things that are going on, like with Jimmy Kimball, for example, um, when the public sort of shows its rejection and its anger about the behaviors of big corporations, um, it is causing some of those corporations to sort of step back a bit because they're not used to meeting walls of resistance where they're losing literally billions of dollars in a handful of hours because people are responding in a way that they thought they wouldn't, right? The problem with these people who live in these power bubbles is that they really, really lose sight of the average person and how the average person is actually responding and reacting to what is going on, particularly in the United States. They have insulated themselves in such a way so that they don't really ever have to face or acknowledge the real sentiment that's going on because they keep themselves surrounded by like minds. And so when they experience a real significant pushback, um, it sort of sets them back on their heels a little bit. Now, you and me would think, oh, okay, well, then that means that they should change their behavior so they stop annoying people and making people mad. That's what you and I would think, right? But their reaction seems to be one of, um, oh, okay, we got to push harder, right? We've got to literally cram through as much stuff as we can cram through that is to our benefit, which is why um, you're not seeing a lot of big companies basically, while they may be sort of quietly going against 45's mandate, you do this, get rid of that person, I don't like him making fun of me. Um, they're they're sort of they're keep it's like they're keeping their true motivations, their true agendas hidden. And so while they may let somebody else back on the air, that doesn't mean the other hand is still not handing over um, support to allow the push to continue. And the thing is that not only is 45 receiving support from some very, very wealthy people, even though as everything goes to court, because everything he does is like blatantly illegal and against the Constitution, and he gets knocked back and knocked back and knocked back at all of the courts until it gets to the Supreme Court. And when it gets to the Supreme Court, they seem to like to turn the Constitution into like a plate of spaghetti and like twist it all up so that they can come up with some sort of a reason to justify why what he is doing or did is okay. So, from his perspective, he has big money still behind him, and he has the court, the ultimate court. And all these little slaps on the hand that they get along the way, they don't really slow him down because for him, it's just a pit stop on the way to the court that's going to let him do what he wants, basically. And so, because of that, he has decided that his close friendship with Vladimir can survive um, if he does not completely toe the line. And because, this is the thing, long before Trump was elected the first time, you can make sure that the Kremlin had very complete and extensive knowledge, information, personality analysis. They knew 45 better than 45 knew himself. And so for a country like Russia, it's all about the long game, right? It's not about, okay, well, let's get him into office once, okay? All right, he lost the second time out, but we're going to cram him through and we're going to get him in the third time. And so what you have is this idea of we can wait it out, right? We can let the little puppet dance around and act like a fool and, carry on like he's invincible because ultimately we will pull him back if he gets too far out of line. But, if there's one thing Donald is amazingly good at, it is self-delusion. So he feels as if he had some flexibility there. And even though the last meeting that the two leaders of those countries had certainly looked as if the United States and its administration really got their hands slapped. They came out of that meeting looking a wee little bit nauseous and shell shocked. But what's going on? It's like this. What's going on within the United States? There is a different agenda that is being pushed and forced through than the agenda from the other country. Um, it's as if somebody has sort of lit a fire um, under the right in the United States, and there is a sense of um, we have to get this done. Time's running out. We may not get another, kick the can. And so we've got to push through as much stuff as possible because the reality is, if we can get whatever it is all the way to the Supreme Court and they agree with us, right? Even down the line, it's going to take a lot of work to reverse the decisions that that court has made. It doesn't get reversed in a blink. I mean, how many decades did it take to get the abortion um, rulings reversed? Decades, decades, decades. Because so what they're thinking is let's get as much stuff in place as we can because then we can basically make hay while the sun shines and let the other party yell and scream and drag us to court and try to rework the laws and do whatever because we still have this huge window of time before it actually gets where it needs to go. And furthermore, unless the dynamics of that court shift significantly, they can just simply choose to not hear cases, right? They can just go, yeah, no, we're not going to listen to that one. So, or yes, we're going to take it on, and no, we're not going to reverse our decision, right? So there's a lot of moving parts in this situation. But like when I asked to see the relationship between the two, like, and I'm sure you guys have seen this because I know I've seen it somewhere on YouTube or cartoons or something where, Donald sits on Vlad's lap like a puppet, right? And he mimics and says whatever he wants or whatever, you know, the ventriloquist wants him to say and behave the way he wants him to behave. All that you've got going on right now is that the um the feeling of empowerment, entitlement, invincibility is the word I keep hearing, has grown to a space and a place where he really does feel like he can get away with a lot. And he is. I mean, that's a sad and painful truth, is he is getting away with a lot. Um, I'm not going to get into um, sort of picking something apart or picking sides, but simply by the way that they create the propaganda within the United States of manipulating um, and creating conspiracy theories around events gives them a significant amount of power. Um, I did a quick scan through sort of YouTube, and I was stunned, honestly, at all of the videos that are out there with regards to the murder of Charlie. And it started with this have to be, this is coming from the left, absolutely. Well, so what you find out is that the alleged shooter, his parents were strong, strong MAGA, and he was apolitical. He was having a problem with um, Charlie's rhetoric about the trans people. That was his issue. Um, so it's like they encourage this sort of conspiracy theories, and they blame the left, and the left still does not seem to have figured out how to be strong enough to push back in a significant way. And so it amplifies and it grows bigger and bigger. And the bigger and bigger it grows, the more that administration basically is allowed to get away with. And there's so much misinformation out there. And there is so much stuff that's going on that is just twisted and turned and manipulated in such a way that even if the truth were hitting people square in the face, um, they don't believe it. They don't see it because they've already got their heads filled up with all of this other erroneous or slanted information. It is going to take concentrated and focused energy to move the country forward in a way that is able to counter that lower vibrational energy. So, I know I've said this before, but I actually read somewhere where they've actually scientifically like proven it. So, for every negative comment or situation, it takes 5 positive ones to cancel the negative one. You think about this in your own life. If, you say something like to yourself, like, how could you be so stupid? You have to say 5 things that counter that just to correct that one spontaneous remark. Think about that for a moment. And think about what that means in terms of shifting energy into a more positive place and format. Now, make no mistake, we have here on the planet a lot of support. We have divine support, we have angelic support, we have support from other galaxies, because this little rock that we're all revolving on um, can send out huge ripple waves that impact other places and civilizations that we can't even begin to think about or comprehend. It is so easy for people to just jump and attack. And the problem with that is that you need to be very mindful that you're not falling into um, sort of a behavior or an energy that is actually creating resistance where you don't want resistance to be felt. This is the thing. No matter how we feel about somebody, whether it is a person or a situation or a country or a system, nothing is 100% evil and nothing is 100% pure. Not on this planet. And so I'm not suggesting that we all need to put a blind eye to the negative stuff and just look for everybody's better angels. But what I am saying is that the energy is intensifying. And where we're at right now, from now and I swear till the end of the year and into early in the new year, we're in an energy, in a time where more and more and more information is going to come out. And it's really important that we monitor what we're taking in and sort of, recognize for a moment that we want to make sure that we are not in our own bubbles where we only want to hear what aligns with us. And if that means that something really simple um, can get twisted around and a negative connotation put on it, well, that's okay. The one that struck me the most, I kid you not, was I was watching a couple of clips from CK's big memorial deal and his wife's speech and the interactions that went on between her and 45. And at one point, or at a couple points, she smiled. And it was like, how sad can she be? What kind of grieving is that? Well, you know what? I encourage every single one of you to think back to probably most funerals or memorials that you have ever been to. People laugh, they smile, they tell jokes, they tell stories. Yes, they grieve, but them smiling doesn't mean they're not grieving. But yet there was this rush to attack. And so you have a situation now where the energies are really, really starting to pit against each other. And I encourage everybody to do everything they can to make sure that they are, and I've said this before, if you can't stand in a positive place, at least for the love of God, stand in a benign one so that you're not shooting out energy in a direction that you don't want to shoot out. You know, when something happens, we can either stand around and wring our hands and go, oh my God, what are we going to do? This is a disaster. Or we take the next step and we do what's next and we carry on to correct whatever it is. And I know that that is the hope and the intention and the purpose of all of you. And I'm encouraging you to hold that space because from now until, I don't know, February or March, it's going to be a bit of a challenge because you're going to start hearing things and seeing things, and the impulse to push back um, is going to be really, really strong. But sometimes you have to play the long game, you know? Sometimes you just do. And getting upset and worried and anxious now does not encourage or energize the very, very energies and emotions that we need to surround ourselves with, not only to keep ourselves just balanced, but to ensure that we are continually sending out the most positive and most productive energy. And this is the thing I want you to remember. Even though it looks like things are spiraling right out of control, we're winning. The light is winning. More and more people are going, whoa, whoa, that was a bridge too far. That what he just did? That was a bridge too far. Oh, wait a minute. No, no. Corporation, that was a bridge too far. And now you're going to pay the price because we're going to cancel our subscriptions or we're going to stop using our product or we're going to whatever it is. It's important that we don't view where we're at right now as some kind of a war. Because as soon as you bring that word into it, you're slamming it with the negative energy connected to the word war. That's why things like the war on poverty and the war on drugs and the war on whatever never quite seem to work. Because it's not supposed to be a war. It's supposed to be a thoughtful, positive, embracing course correction. It's not a war. All right. So where we're at right now is the bromance seems to be the puppet is being allowed basically to dance. But make no mistake, if he dances too far, he's gonna get jerked back into place. And as far as the countries surrounding um Russia, take a moment and send them some light and love because the anxiety is really high, and the worry is real. and intent. And I just finished saying why that's not helpful. So, um, and listen, you know what? I'm not going to pick on any other country that's surrounding Russia, and they're afraid, because you know what? I would be too. The idea is that we send energy to counterbalance their anxiety and their fear. All right. That's what I know right now. Thank you so very much for being here. If you managed to get through the 35 minutes and 27 seconds of this, I really, really do appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, take care and be well. Bye for now.